Welcome to Tuesdays with Tom, a Procurious podcast series featuring exclusive insights from Tom Derry, CEO of the Institute for Supply Management. The topic of today's podcast is the CPO of the future. Procurious founder Tanya Siri will discuss with Tom why companies are appointing CPOs from outside of the profession, the number one category that will produce future CPOs, and a new label for the role of CPO. Over to you, Tom and Tanya.
Tom, we've talked in the past about how modern-day CPOs are vastly different to the CPOs of, say, a decade ago, both in terms of their management style and their expectations that are put upon them. So I think it's safe for us to predict that CPOs in 10 to 15 years' time will be similarly unrecognisable. So, of course, I'm going to put you on the hot seat as usual. My first question is, who will get the top job in supply management in the future? And I guess I'm talking about what sort of professional background. I think we were all a little bit unnerved when Deb Stanton from CAPS Research presented her 2020 future study at last year's Big Ideas Summit and demonstrated a real trend of CPO appointments away from the traditional procurement and supply profession. This may mean that a savvy marketing professional or a cost-conscious operations manager who understands how supply management works could make a very attractive candidate for the CPO role. What do you think about this?
Well, of course, you're asking me to anger all my current members, but I'm going to remember that I'm speaking to my future members of ISM, so that's okay. I think there's no question that the requirements of the job and even the definition of the job have to evolve and will evolve over time, and not in a not too distant future. I'm very familiar with that CAPS research study, and one of the key themes that study put forward was this idea of a demand-driven supply chain. And when you think about that, it means an orientation toward and a sensitivity to the needs and requirements of the customer and flexing to meet the customer's requirements, and configuring your supply chain and your procurement activities to meeting those customer requirements. So customer-facing expertise, the ability to interact with, understand, and even anticipate customer needs will be the critical skill. Then you set vision and strategy, and then your team can implement vision and strategy based on what you've identified. Another way of saying that is market expertise, understanding where your company is and what markets they're going after and what the characteristics of those markets are. The characteristics in terms of customer, but also characteristics in terms of suppliers and components. So you could even use a Porter's Five Forces analysis to understand markets. So someone with that kind of strategy background, understanding where markets are today and where they're headed, would be ideally suited to lead the supply chains and the procurement activities of the future. So, what we don't need are process experts. We don't need in the future someone who's grown up through the ranks of procurement and has become very, very good at running an RFP process or even scouting for new suppliers, understanding supply markets, even becoming, a category manager par excellence. Those are important critical skills, but they aren't the leadership skills that are required to lead the entire company's effort. They're just necessary functional skills. And I wouldn't look necessarily for people, some will go become category managers and then move laterally into different positions, maybe take a job in strategy with their firm and then move to the top job. But it won't be a straight line path. You won't be climbing a ladder within the function to get to the CPO job. You're going to have to go leave the function and come back, or potentially just come from outside the function because you've got the vision and strategic skills that are required to lead the function, not the technical skills.
One of the other professions I really look to is the IT professionals, particularly those CIOs out there, because when you think about it, they're very well positioned to take over the CPO role. They already control an important and large chunk of strategic spend. Soon everything we're buying will include an element of technology. They know how to drive change. They're obviously innovation scouts, and they understand one of the biggest threats to most companies these days, which is cybersecurity. So I think we've certainly got the full range of competition out there for those, that top job. We're all sort of always talking about chasing the CPO role, but are we even sure that's going to be a title moving forward? I know there's been a lot of discussions around whether we should even have that title, and I know it's popular in Australia and the US. I think here in Europe it's more head of procurement, but there are some chief procurement officers. What are you thinking about titles, and do they matter?
Well, yeah, of course they matter, because they send a signal both internally to the organization about what we value and how we define functions, and as important, if not more important, an external signal to the world about what we do and how we do it. And so titles, I believe, really do matter. Yeah, we've seen some interesting evolutions. I was reminded recently, I met a woman who's the CPO of a large financial services company, but she's also the chief financial officer of IT and head of business transformation for the firm. So you think about those three roles blending together. There's your point about IT, Tanya, and the critical set of skills that are very relevant in the future. Head of business transformation, that's a logical outgrowth of what we do in procurement and supply chain today, isn't it? I could coin a few terms. I could imagine someone will be called a chief ecosystem officer in the future, or maybe a little more.
Ecosystem.
I think it would make sense. It's a little more conventional. Might be chief commercial officer, but when you think about what they do at the highest sort of expressions of the function, they are managing that entire capability network that a company needs to rely on in order to get its job done and serve its customers. And that means aligning the right companies with the right capabilities with your own internal company's strategic objectives. That's a bigger, broader mandate than most people tend to think about. It's a critical strategic mandate. And if you're actually charged with managing that network, I can't think of a single major corporation that is fully vertically integrated, and therefore, the old economic term of autarky. There's nobody who's self-sufficient anymore. We all require these networks to be successful, and nobody more than whatever the chief procurement officer title evolves to in the future. No one more than that particular individual is responsible for managing those outside networks.
I couldn't agree more. I just see our future in the center of this huge e-enabled network of commercial relationships. And, when all the data and our robots and our Watson is pointing in different directions, we're still going to have to step in and negotiate and reach some sort of agreement between all the parties. So, I totally agree. We're going to be front and centre in this huge network of commercial relationships, but very much that it's going to be our soft skills that are really going to be critical. Okay, well, I guess we just need a crystal ball, Tom, to see what the most popular title for our profession is moving forward. But it'll be interesting to see if you and I aren't already retired at that stage.
Well, God willing, I hope to be working for some time yet.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Tom. I look forward to speaking with you shortly.
Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you for listening to our Tuesdays with Tom podcast, powered by Procurious and ISM. Stay tuned for more podcasts in this series, which will be made available for streaming in the learning area on procurious.com.